Okay, good evening, protectors. Welcome back to the Education of Weaponized Man podcast. Coach Greg here with you with Coach Dustin, Coach Brad. Listen, happy to have you joining us. And tonight, before we kick to the intro real quick, tonight is going to be a great one. You're going to want to bookmark this. You're going to want to add this to your favorites. You're going to want to reference back to this. This is going to apply to not only facing violence, life and death violent altercations, but it is also going to help you every time you face the fook of life, the fear, the uncertainty, the chaos, and the erraticness of life. We are going to share with you tonight how we bulletproof the mind. Back in 30 seconds. My name is Greg LaBeouf, and I'm sharing insights for how I went from the victim of a brutal attempted murder to weaponizing my mind and body, mastering the tool of violence so that I can protect myself and my family from violent criminal assault, and how for the past 30 years, I've been helping good people just like you do the same. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. Okay, so listen, we're going to talk about how we bulletproof the mind. Okay, it's such an important part. Let's throw out a buzzword, and it's not. I mean, it's a great word and it's a great quality, but everyone uses it. You can hear it a lot of different places. Mental toughness. So if we're talking about bulletproofing the mind, mental toughness is part of that equation. Okay, now why is it important to bulletproof the mind? Well, because you're facing a crisis, right? And I said that this is going to help you whether you are facing violence, life and death, grievous bodily harm, injury, violence, or whether you are facing the fook of life, the fear, the uncertainty, the chaos, the erraticness. Life is fucking tough. Life is hard. We talked about, I think it was last week's podcast, we talked about the importance of being a dangerous man, being a formidable man. And again, why? Because life is fucking hard. So it stands to reason that we follow up that conversation with sharing with you how we are bulletproofing our minds. Okay, now I say this because I'm going to share how I use these tools to bulletproof my mind, and Dustin and Brad can share with you how they use the tools. You're going to see some crossover, but each of us is uniquely and is our own unique individual. So the immutable concepts are the same, but how we tweak it or how we apply it in our lives or to what degree we use each of the tools is going to be sometimes, different. But this is what is working. This is what's worked for me. This is what works for them. And this is what has been working for our clients for the last 30 years. We're constantly always upgrading these tools. We're constantly always figuring out how to be more surgical with them. And so again, this is a conversation that we will revisit in the future because every time we come up with some little tweak, it's worth sharing. So like I said, add this to your favorites list, bookmark it, do whatever you got to do. But you're going to want to reference back to this, especially when you're going through hard times. If your life is fucking burning, this is a resource. This is more like, this whole Education of Weaponized Man podcast is our attempt to document our journey. Mine specifically going from the victim of brutal attempted murder to mastering the tool of violence and actually being the type of man that can protect myself and my family, that has the safety, confidence, and certainty, as I walk through this life, right? So let's go with this. Here's how we start off. The first thing people have to understand, in my opinion, the first thing that I had to understand, my first big breakthrough, was recognizing something called the ozone. Okay? Now, the ozone means simply optimal zone of natural excellence. Okay? So if you were going to diagram this out, if I diagram this out for people, I literally draw a circle like a bullseye, the center of a piece of paper, and in the center of that circle, that is your ozone, your optimal zone of natural excellence. Okay, so in the bullseye, that's obviously dead center. That's where we want to be. Well, what happens when you get outside of the circle? What happens if you're not in the bullseye? Well, then, you're off a little bit, okay? So on any direction that you can move away from the circle is going to represent less than optimal control. So now I do it this way. In the center of my circle is my bullseye. That's my ozone, my optimal zone of natural excellence. That's your peak state. That is where you are the best, highest version of yourself. Meaning whatever your task is, whether it's defending yourself and your family from violent criminals, or whether it's just handling the fucking stress of life at fucking work, wherever it is, that is where you want to be. That's your optimum state. Okay, now, outside of that, I draw a giant plus through it, much like you're doing crosshairs. Right? So you got a bullseye dead center and draw a giant line down, vertical line down, and draw a giant horizontal line going across. And now you've got a plus sign in the middle of it. Of course, it's big. Fill up the whole page of the paper. You've got 4 quadrants now, right? That basically divided your paper in 4 with the center being your ozone. So we want to be in that center. But I want to define, again, this is not by any stretch all encompassing, but this is going to be your 4 major categories. Okay? So in, let's say, the top left quarter of that paper, you want to write down mental control. Okay, so it's mental control in the top left section. On the other half, on the right top side of the page, you're going to write emotional control. Okay, so the top left is mental control or psychological control. The top right is emotional control. Now you're going to go down to the bottom two quadrants. So it doesn't really matter what side, but let's say on the bottom right, underneath emotional control, underneath there, you're going to write physiological control. And then on the left side, bottom left, right, underneath mental or psychological control, underneath that, you're going to write physical control. So now, we've got our center, which is our ozone, optimal zone of natural excellence. That's your peak state. That's where you want to be. You've got the upper left quadrant, which is the mental or the psychological control. The upper right, which is the emotional control. The bottom right, which is physiological control. And the bottom left, which is physical control. These are the four elements. You need to bring these four things. You see, when I'm in control, let's use a term that I know people tend to misunderstand. When you have mastered control over these four realms. Now, when I say mastered, I don't mean perfection. I don't mean you've transcended to become some Buddhist monk, some perfect human being. Mastery, by our definition, means that you have worked the tools to do these things without the subconscious awareness. You are unconsciously competent. Meaning you don't have to think about it. You ask a boxer to snap out a jab, he just snaps out a jab. A pro boxer snaps a jab out. His body knows what to do. Why? Not because he's fucking perfect, not because he's infallible. He can do it because he's done it thousands of times to where it's just visceral. It's like walking to him. It becomes part of your nature. That does not mean that every jab you throw is perfect. So mastery does not mean perfection. It means that we understand the value of something. A boxer and his jab, a jab is an essential tool to most boxers, right? Well, these tools that are going to allow us to bulletproof the mind, are going to allow us to achieve a level of mastery. That's what we want to work them to. Another word you can put in there is functionalism. You've functionalized these tools, meaning that more often than not, you can use these tools to effectively achieve a result. You're functional. Not perfect. You got to remember, we're human beings. We are emotional creatures. So trying to regulate and control these four areas, which give us and allow us to live in a state, operate in a state of mental toughness, we're not always going to be perfect. There's lots of things that are going to challenge us, but that is why we are sharing this. We must bulletproof to the best of our ability. We must bulletproof consistently the tools that are used to create and allow us to operate in our ozone. Now, if you are not in your ozone, you are not your best state. Everyone fucking knows what this feels like, right? This is not a stretch. Everybody knows what it feels like to not be on your game. Okay, now, when you're not on the game, one of these four areas or a combination of them is off. You maybe don't have the emotional control that day, the psychological control. Your self-talk turns negative, right? Your self-image turns negative. You have negative expectations. Which impacts your motivation, which is because of some fucking paradigm or belief that's buried deep within you. You have a conflicting, whatever the fuck it is. It could be because you're overtired. It could be a lot of factors, but you could be mentally off. That means that when you look at that ozone and you're trying to be in the bullseye, you put imagine like a little metal ball bearing that's rolling around that ozone. And if you're mentally off that day, that ball bearing, the whole table is shifted to the upper left. That ball bearing starts to roll, and it's like an indicator. It's rolling into loss of mental or psychological control. Some days you got multiple bearings in there, and you got one rolling into each fucking section. You're having a real bad day. I just want to have a very powerful visual, because one of the things that helped me was really being able to stop and have the awareness. Remember, control follows awareness. You cannot control what you are not aware of. And when I wasn't feeling in my optimum state, whether it's in training or in life, I needed to stop, take a few seconds, and I needed to learn how to reflect. And thinking about this chart helped me. Okay, I don't feel on today. Is it a mental thing? No, I actually feel mentally, I feel pretty sharp. Is it an emotional thing? Is there an underlying feeling that I have where I'm emotionally feeling upset or, whatever, just sad or frustrated or whatever myriad of different emotions we have the capacity to feel as human beings? Am I emotionally being affected somehow? Is my physiology off? Now we're talking about arousal levels. You can be super fucking jacked up and excited and antsy and all this nervous energy and your arousal level super high, or you can be super low. You can be underaroused. You can be, I'm tired, I haven't slept well in 3-4 days. I'm burnt out, I'm stressed. I'm so stressed I was managing, but it's been 3 weeks of pressure at work and I'm fucking done. I can't handle it anymore. You're emotionally drained. And so when you look at the mental or psychological in the upper left corner, you look at the emotional in the right corner, you look at the physiological, the arousal, what's going on with the stress chemicals in your body, the hormone levels in your body, all of those things can impact negatively the physical. And the physical, when I say your physical control, I mean your actions. That's how you judge it. Now listen, you can be physically, say, listen, I'm injured. I got a fucking broken leg. I got a twisted arm. I got broken fingers. I got a sore fucking neck. I got, my knees are all fucked up. My back is hurting. Now, this might be temporary. This might be chronic. So your physical body can be hurting, but also you can tell when things are out of balance, when you're not taking the actions that are your standards. That is also loss of physical control. And most likely, if you go, listen, I'm healthy, I feel good. I mean, yeah, maybe I'm a little tired, maybe there's a tiny bit of stress, but physically I feel good. I can get the job done. Then why are you not making good decisions? Why are you not taking the actions that you need to be taken to fucking bulletproof yourself, to fucking dominate in life, to rise regardless? Nobody wants to fucking just survive. You need to thrive. So why are you taking the actions that are just allowing you to survive? Why are you not thriving? Look to the other 3 areas. Our whole goal is to recognize these areas, develop tools so we can bulletproof and regulate these things. If you do not regulate, if you cannot regulate, meaning regulate what, Greg? Regulate your psychological or mental. You cannot regulate your emotions. You cannot regulate your physiology, and you cannot take control over and regulate your physical body and your actions. Then you're never going to be in ozone. And that means you're going to fucking lose every time. Because if you regulate, you win. And if you don't, you lose. So hopefully everyone now has a clear understanding of what we're talking about. Life and death, violent situation. You better have your mental shit fucking tight. You better have your emotions under control. And I don't mean devoid of emotions like some cold, heartless fucking Rambo character that you've seen in the movies. I mean, you better understand how to process your emotions in that fucking moment. So you got to be mentally tough. You got to be emotionally tough. You got to physiologically control your arousal level. Control the stress hormones and the stress chemicals that are fucking ripping through your body. Because if you can't control those, you will go condition black and you will fucking fail. And if you can control those 3 areas, you can then, and you're weaponized, meaning you understand the physical actions you need to take, you can then hit that ozone. You can enter into that sweet spot, that optimal zone of natural excellence. Okay, so hopefully this painted a picture and this set up this idea of what I want to talk about tonight. It's very important that we all have a mental model so that you can really understand the value of these tools. So, having set this up, guys, dominating the conversation a bit, but having painted the picture of ozone and what 4 main ingredients are part of mental toughness, so that, again, we have to have a framework. If we don't have a framework, then we can't share how we're doing these things. We have to make this tangible because mental toughness is very intangible to most people. It's just something people say, but they don't have a game plan for how to work it. So this is the framework for how not just us, but how elite tier 1 operators, this is the framework that they use. This is the framework that we use. Why? Because it fucking works. This is what all our clients do. This is how it changed the game for us, how it changed the game for them. So having painted this mental model, is there anything you guys want to add to it, or what is your visceral response to what we were talking about tonight and the picture the framework that I've shared with everybody?
It just, with the picture that you painted, it's, like the one thing that comes into my mind real quick is just that they all have to work. They all affect each other, right? Because you said one thing that really resonated with me, where you talked about if your emotional control or your physiological control is out of whack, your physical, what you're doing in the physical realm may not be up to your standards, or you may not be taking those actions. And I think it's very important that, if you even have 3 of these that you're like, oh, these are at like 95%, but you got one that is like just dog shit and it's dragging. It's like, you can't, there's no way, like, there's no way that you could actually be honest and say, oh, there's 95%. Well, I don't know, like, because they all affect your overall state and everything. Obviously I'm talking to the point of like the fluke of life part of it right now. So, but yeah, no, it's just kind of my 2 cents I want to put into on that part.
Perfect. Yeah, you're talking about interconnectedness, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is my audio okay?
Yep.
The one thing that kind of hit me with it is just, it's interesting how when you look at all 4 kind of quadrants of this mental model that you've given people, it's interesting how, and this is Brad kind of alluded to this, how one thing may stand out in one moment where that's what you're struggling with the most, and then that can actually impact the other 3 and potentially cause those to take a downward slide as well. But on the flip side, it can also do the exact opposite. I think sometimes you can be struggling, maybe you're struggling in more than one of them, but there will almost always be one that you can actually use to try and bring the other ones more on board, if you know what I mean. Like, sometimes you're usually having just a mentally tough time. You're just negative self-talk, you're saying the wrong things. Maybe you end up doing something physical, and then that actually starts to shift your state, which then allows you to improve your mental. Or, you could go through the physiological door and you do some breath work or something like that. So it's kind of interesting to me. I think it's just important to point out to people that as much as one of them can impact the other ones negatively, they can also just as easily impact them in a positive way too. So it can become an effective tool, just to know that.
Okay. It's perfect. It's great. And I want to just clearly paint another part of the framework that each guy mentioned, the 2 parts. What they're both talking about is the interconnectedness. What Brad is talking about is he wanted to reinforce how one quadrant that is off, you might not even fully recognize that it's off, can have a negative impact on the other 3. So he's just stating that the interconnectedness between the 3 is very important for people to understand. Mental toughness has to be thought of like almost all training, all growth, all parts of life as whole person integrated development, meaning you cannot just be mentally in control, like psychologically, you go very tough psychologically, but yet you have no emotional control, or you have no physiological control or awareness. So Brad's talking about the interconnectedness of those and just how one can detract from the other. What Dustin did was he talked about, yes, that's 100% true. However, I want people to understand that these things are interconnected and that you can actually use one to actually bring up other ones. So you can use them in a positive way and you can help bring up the other levels that maybe are lagging. Now, what he's talking about is the next part of this, and I'll just say it, but what he's giving you is the framework we want to share. He's saying there is this thing called personal psychological ops, personal psyops. That is what we use. That is the process we use to bulletproof our mind. This is the process that elite military operators use to bulletproof their mind. People talk about psyops, psychological warfare in the military, and they'll talk about like the US government or whatever foreign country using psychological warfare against the enemy. Does that happen? Of course it happens. Now, whatever you think about that, right or wrong, depends on the context, determines content. Is it legal? Is it moral? Doesn't matter. Do you understand who the Americans, I'll just use the Americans because obviously they're one of the great powers, one of the great military mights in the world, but do you know who they have used the most psychological warfare against? It is not their enemy. It is their own soldiers. And now some people say, well, this is a negative thing, and I'm sure there are negative side effects to certain things, but I just want to talk about it in the way that it is an absolute positive. Imagine using psychological warfare, psych ops, on your own soldiers. Why would you do it? Well, you do it to fucking bulletproof their mind. You see, this is psychological warfare. Mental toughness is psychological warfare. So we use the personal psyops, we use these tools on ourselves knowingly. We work them, develop them to a level of mastery or a level of functionalism. Remember, it doesn't mean we're perfect, but we use them, we know them, we gain awareness, which means we gain control, and we launch a psychological warfare campaign against ourselves. And how many times should you do this? And how long should you do it for? Every fucking day. What do you guys do every morning? What's your routine called?
Prime time.
Prime time.
I do a morning routine called prime time. They do a morning routine called prime time. Prime time is what? Psychological warfare. And who is it done against?
Ourselves.
It's done against yourself. And who does it?
You. Me.
Yourself. It is a solo mission, man. Prime timing is the routine, and we're about to share with you. We have a very specific prime time routine, which is part of our greater psychological ops. And you can find that. Matter of fact, I share that program for free with people. You can download it. You can do it's called 5-Day Prime the Protector. You get a fucking workbook with it, and we teach you how to battle them. We teach you how to go through the entire thing. Okay, but we're doing psychological warfare, and every morning from the second I come back into conscious awareness, not from the time I get up, from the second I come into conscious awareness, I attack my mind and my body and my emotions and my physical. I attack it with psychological warfare, and these are the tools that we're going to use. So what Dustin's saying is, how do I do that? How do I do something physical, and why does that work to improve my emotional control or my psychological state or to help impact my arousal levels or my physiological state? Because it's psychological warfare. It's a tool. You learn how to do that. That's the personal psyops. Okay, so that's what we're going to share. Okay, so we understand that we have this ozone. Now, just because I want to give everybody a piece of terminology, because this is going to play into when we share the tools with you. If I said to these guys, all right, are you guys clicked in or get clicked in? What does that term mean to you guys? Pretty simple, but what does it mean to you?
It means for me to click into my ozone, to click into my peak optimal state.
Exactly.
Right? Optimal zone of natural excellence.
Dustin, what does it mean to you?
Yep, same thing. Get clicked into the right state of mind to do whatever it is you need to do, whatever the task at hand is.
Perfect. There we go. Let's explore this. So when any of us says, let's get clicked in, or it's time to click in. Now listen, I could say it externally. I can tell these guys that we're getting ready to train. I can say, okay, guys, take 30 seconds. I could say take 15 minutes. I could say take 30 minutes. I could say take 3 seconds. Doesn't matter. The time frame, they learn to adjust. And I say, get clicked in, meaning get in fucking state. And you have to be able to do this. Like, this takes practice. But you can literally go from relaxed, almost sleeping, safe, secure, comfortable, to your fucking bedroom door being blown open and 3 guys rushing in there, wife screaming, kids are screaming. Everything went from calm, sleepy, relaxed to fucking hell on earth. And you've got a half a fucking second to get clicked in. Get to state. You think that happens by accident? You think just walking around claiming to be mentally tough or thinking you're mentally tough because when you have tons of time to prepare for something or think about something or, something, all that shit. Lots of people can do that when they have enough time. You give an athlete 3 weeks to get ready for a big competition. It's much easier in some aspects to show up mentally tough. It's not always easy, but it is much easier than sometimes getting clicked in the state in a fraction of a second in a life and death crisis. So the point is, being clicked in is synonymous. It's the verb, click in, meaning that is the command that activates the process that we're about to share with you. Okay? So being clicked in, get clicked in. Now you can tell it to yourself. It can be a self-command. It's time to click in. It can be an external cue, click in. And everyone knows peak state. Now, the other side of this, as Dustin said, it's clicking in, get into peak state for whatever the task is. Now, here's the simplest analogy. Take football. You got a quarterback. You've got the linebacker. Okay? In hockey, you take a center, a forward player, center, left wing, right wing, doesn't matter, but take a forward player and take the goalie. Let's break it down. In football, if you're the quarterback, Do you need to be in the exact same physiological, mental, and emotional state as the linebacker?
Absolutely not. You're doing two completely different things.
What are you talking about, Brad? It's football.
Yeah,
We're
no,
all
but
on the same team. How could it possibly be different?
just thinking about the football players, like the linesmen and such, and the quarterback. They're like one guy actually has to think and have the overview and the calmness to make a decision, right? And I'm
You're talking
totally
about the linebacker, clearly.
talking about the quarterback, but hopefully I'm not bastardizing it. But then you have the linebacker that is like he's fucking all out, like he's at a 10, like he's doing everything he can to stop the opposing line in front of him to penetrate his defenses, right? And whatever the play that they're having to do. So he's there, and the other guy's got to get back in the pocket. And he's got to pick his moment and watch his receivers or run a play or do you know what I mean? And so completely different states because they're completely different tasks at hand and different energies that are right in front of them to an extent.
100%. Now, that means that ozone that we have in the center of our diagram, if you're imaging this in your mind, that means that's a circle. That circle, there's space in that circle, right? That means it's not a pinhead, it's not one dot. It is a circle, the ozone, the optimal zone. That means within that center, within that zone, depending on what the mission in front of you is, you are going to plot yourself into that ozone at various levels, various locations. It's still all the ozone. But if you're the quarterback, or you need to do a quarterback-esque task, that means that, I have to have an overview of the entire game. I have to be athletic. I have to drop back into the pocket. I have to potentially scramble. I have to, like everything Brad just said, you have to have the placement, the accuracy, the emotional control, the flow, the fluidity, the speed, the power, the explosiveness. All of that shit is going on. The peripheral acuity. You got to have all this dynamic stuff going on. Well, that's probably a little bit more like a sniper on Overwatch as he's watching his teammates below move down a fucking a danger street in a fully operational theater, of operations in a combat zone. He's got to be relaxed. He's overviewing and watching everything. The boots on the ground, the guys that are about to breach the fucking door, are more like the linebackers. Not exactly, but you get what I mean.
It's the difference between gross motor skill and fine motor skill.
Yes.
The linebacker's gross motor skill and the quarterback is going to be maybe a low fine motor skill.
Yeah. And just so everyone has motor function, right? You have fine motor function, complex motor function, and gross motor function. And so you're going to have a linebacker that's complex, gross motor. You're going to have a quarterback that's more high, complex, fine, or depending on the play and depending on what he's doing, more high. Like they're going to move up and down this scale. But each task can have a specific ozone. Now, here's the other side of it. If I'm the quarterback, all three of us are quarterbacks, does that automatically mean that all three of us are the exact same spot within the ozone? We are at the exact same arousal level? Does that mean we all play best with a 123 beat per minute heart rate? We're all super on the calmer end, more relaxed and softer? Or can we be different, even though all three of us are quarterbacks?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can completely be different, for sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Your ozone is unique. It's like a snowflake, right? Yours is how you get yours and what yours looks like is completely different than mine. There could be similarities, but in all reality, what a tool that I use to get into mine might not be one that resonates with you.
Exactly. And what they're saying, the snowflake analogy is great, right? If you look outside in a day when it's snowing, it all looks like snow. It all hits the ground, and when it accumulates, it's all snow, it's all white, it's all fluffy, or whatever it happens to be that day. But yet, if you examine it closely, it's each uniquely its own thing.
I think the other thing too, with talking about the different arousal levels, is we also have different baseline arousal levels.
Beautiful.
So even if we both need to come to a similar point, like it's not going to be the same, like we're talking about the snowflake analogy, but I might just typically be at a higher arousal level, and Brad might be at a lower arousal level. And so I might be using tactics and tools to bring my arousal down to hit peak state. He might be using tactics and tools to bring his arousal up to hit peak state. So we're actually both in a similar peak state. So you have to learn what is your baseline level of arousal too, so that you can get to where your peak state needs to be.
Perfect. All knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge. And what Brad and Dustin are explaining, what you're starting to become aware of as we break it down, is that we're each a unique individual. Yet at the end of the day, the mental control, the emotional control, the physiological control, and control over our physical actions and body, that's universal for all of us. We're all the same species, but we are different. Now, Dustin's talking about a beautiful thing, like our baseline can just be different. So not only do we maybe need to get to a different spot on the chart, where we start from, the start line is very different. You have everyone, right? You have some people that are just naturally very energetic, very excitable, high-strung people. And you have other people that are very monotone and they're very relaxed and they're very just turtle-like. And I don't mean that in a negative, I mean they're just slower.
Think of like everybody, most people, at least people our age, know Tigger versus Eeyore. Right? Two very different baselines of arousal.
And if each of those,
Tigger, you all know an Eeyore.
Yeah, it's 100% true. And if each of those are quarterbacks, they got to get to their peak state. Tigger's going to have to fucking calm down a little bit, right? And Eeyore's he's got to take on a little Tigger. He's got to move up a little bit. And that's where I want you to recognize one of the biggest failings of self-defense training today that is happening, modern self-defense training, quote unquote self-defense training, is nobody teaches the arousal level because it's so individualized, meaning that you actually have to have instructors that A, understand the importance of this, and B, know how to help recognize it in people and how to give them the tools. Like if you just taught a universal set of tools in the sense of like I taught everybody how to go from low arousal to high arousal, assuming everybody had to go from Eeyore, getting them jacked up for combat, well, then the guy that's Tigger, I'd fucking shoot him off. He'd be in the next stratosphere and he'd fail because he would not be regulating. His little, ball bearing would come out of the ozone and he wouldn't be as effective, right? So this is the importance of recognizing. So right now you ask yourself, who am I more closely like, Eeyore or Tigger? Or somewhere in between? So maybe you're more balanced. What is it, Rabbit? Rabbit seems pretty balanced, or is he angry? I can't remember which one he is, but
I don't know.
One of them is more balanced, I believe.
Let me ask a question real quick then, because, like we're talking about baselines for our natural baseline. Like how, like we've talked about this in the past. Like how do you naturally walk? Are you fast-paced, slow-paced, right? Mm-hmm. So how do people determine their ozone, their baseline for what their actual ozone is?
Yep. Okay. One thing that I would ask people is, and this is just one, what you just said actually right now, is watch people's natural gait pattern. Watch how they do something. Hey, can you walk to the car? Or walk over and grab me that water bottle, and I'll watch people walk over. Can you do this for me? Or ask them to do something, and you watch how they conduct the task. Are they a little bit on the slower side, like slow and smooth, which is fine? Are they a little bit more, they scuttle off and they get stuff done? That's one thing. The other thing I often ask people, short fuse, long fuse. People are like, what? Short fuse or long fuse? Are you quick to anger? Are you quick to get emotionally invested? Are you quick to get upset? Are you quick to react? Or are you think about things? Let that simmer a little bit. Let something happens and it's 3 days later you start feeling the emotions of it. So are you short fuse or are you long fuse? Especially when we're talking about the violent side of it. Because if we're talking about a physical altercation, short fuse or long fuse. If you're short fuse, I was short fuse. I mean, the Irish in me, right? I had a temper. And I was very quick to feel. I'm not saying I was quick to anger. I wasn't quick to take actions like that. I was quick to feel my emotions. I was quick to feel that adrenaline. I was quick to get, flush red in the face. I was quick to have that emotional boom. And then I was quick to feeling like you got the adrenaline vibrate in your body. So I was very much the short fuse. Versus I have a friend of mine that I think of specifically that was exact fucking opposite. He was literally like a sloth. Something would happen and it would just be like, take him half an hour to get one expression out. You could just see there was no emotion. And you're looking at this being like, I've already processed this and reacted 15 different emotions and you haven't even fucking had one emotion hit you yet. He was short fuse. So in that very rough analogy of it, in violence, short fuse is no good And long fuse is no good. Because what happens is it's reactive. When a fuse gets lit, it burns. We don't want that. I want to be a light switch. So I either want to turn on or turn off. You can have a dimmer setting if you want, but you got to be able to regulate and control it. So short fuse, long fuse. If you're typically a short fuse, you're going to have to learn how to use these tools to bring your arousal level down. If you're a long fuse, you're going to have to learn how to be able to bring your arousal levels up. Now, when we say arousal level, even though that's typically referenced to physiological responses, we tend to use arousal and state as kind of a blanketed statement for mental, emotional, physiological, and physical. All four of those dials, like an equalizer on an old stereo, where you got a dial. I imagine they still have equalizers, but I'm thinking the old dial knobs, right, where you're using the sliders. You got to adjust those things to all different levels to get into your peak state. So that would be one way that I would absolutely say. What's your baseline in terms of how you viscerally react to situations? Okay, does that make sense? Do you have a separate way for how you help figure out people? A question or a thing or that you do with people or like to do?
You know what? I think it's just even reflecting back on how I get into my ozone, right? Like with centering and connecting and then zeroing in on the physical level, right? But I think when connecting with identity and why is always been important to me in terms of when we're staging for training or even staging for combat. But like, I think that's important for people to focus on that connection, because that's ultimately, I think, going to bring out a lot of their peak performance, because it's going to connect to their passion and purpose.
Yeah, okay, well, that's one of the tools. So how do you help them determine? Just because we haven't got into the tools yet, so they won't understand what connecting is yet. So how do you have a way other than short fuse, like asking a certain question to help them identify, so that somebody out there listening right now can help figure out whether they need to go up or down? Like, where is your arousal level probably at?
Yeah, no, I like the short fuse, long fuse one for sure, because it's very easy to identify.
Yeah, and it's pretty
also,
general, but it tends to be fairly accurate.
And people's cadence. That cadence is can be definitely how people walk. It's even how people talk
100%.
and answer questions, right? Because if someone, like you said, your friend, is like, they talk very slow and methodical and like drawn out, like you could see people's physiology through how they act and speak and move.
Yeah.
So.
See, what Brad just hit on too is gesture expression. So not only cadence, but gesture expressions, tonality, all of these things are indicators for where a person tends to lie and help them establish their own baseline. And you got to remember that I can have somebody that I'm talking to, and their cadence, their gestures, their expressions, their tonality in their voice, even their, the fuse-esque thing of how, but you're talking to them, you're creating scenarios for them to try to test short fuse, long fuse kind of thing. And they can appear one way. And then once you get into training and you start adding pressure on them, they change. They have a behavioral shift. Mm-hmm. So somebody who's normally very relaxed and calm and slower and methodical and more precise, pressure corrodes that. And they go very reactive or spastic because there's a sense of loss of control. So there's a number of different ways, or a combination of ways, that we would use to help test people. So just as a baseline, we've given you a couple ideas of how to kind of plot where you probably are at and where you most likely need to go when it comes time to operate in a pressure type situation. So let's throw into a couple tools, because we kind of started to do this. It's hard to have this conversation without it. But now we have the ozone. We have the 4 different areas of mental toughness. We know what the term being clicked in means. We've established that every person is slightly unique, whether you have to go down in your arousal levels or come up, but we want to be in the ozone, and it's very specific to each task. Now, in a combat situation, you got to remember, you can be long range, mass attack, close quarter, edged weapons, impact weapons. You can have all of these different elements and dynamics. You can be taking up space, you can be giving space, you can be assaulting, you can be giving, defending more. You can be doing all these different things, and within each of these different tasks can require a state shift, meaning that when I'm taking up space, seizing the initiative, relaying injury onto the human body in the most brutally efficient manner possible, that's like a linebacker. That's like a guy, the breacher, who breaches that door, and the first guy that comes rushing through the door on the assault team. He's in a different state. But the second that you hit the ground, even though it's a life and death situation, might be multiple opponents, weapons still to play, you have to slow the fuck down. On the ground, you cannot, again, it's like, to me, I always equate the ground to someone falling in the pool and they got 30, 40, 50 pounds extra on them in a backpack or something like that, and they're being pulled under. Now, they know how to swim a little bit, but they feel the extra weight and they're sucking down fucking water. And guess what? If you panic at that moment, you'll fucking drown. Guaranteed you will fucking drown. But if you can relax as much as possible and be methodical, that's the ground. You've got to find a different gear. You might physically still have to be moving with a sense of purpose, meaning quicker, but you've got to be mentally and emotionally relaxed. That's been my experience on the ground. Because I know, especially in mass attack situations, I've been there where you're on the ground, you got more than one attacker, and people are trying to lay boots to you, trying to break bottles on you and shit. You cannot mentally and emotionally go too fast because you got to work your way the fuck out of that. Just like at a pool, you can't swallow too much water before you are past the point where it'll become unrecoverable. Okay, so there's different states even within one violent altercation. You're going to have to switch from quarterback to linebacker to receiver to running back to quarterback to linebacker to receiver. And it's going to happen fast sometimes. Sometimes not. Sometimes you're blessed. You can get in the linebacker mindset, go to town, be focused, and, you solve you remove the situation and get the fuck out of there. Sometimes that happens. But we got to train for worst case scenario. So the ability to switch. Okay, so having said all that, now let's go through the personal psyops. There's 4 different tools. Tool number 1 is what?
Tactical arousal control techniques.
That's number 4, but let's go with tactical self-talk. We'll start there. We don't actually have them in a specific order of priority. On my list and how I teach it
today
is tactical self-talk. So we do that today because then it's gonna build. So, but there is no order. These are 4 tools. No one tool is any more important than the other tool, and the tools have overlap and have interconnectedness. You're going to use combinations of these things. How I typically teach it is I start with tactical self-talk. So number 1 is self-talk. Why? That's why I listed them out in the way I did. Psychological control being the first box in the upper left quadrant. So what is self-talk?
what you're saying.
What we say to ourselves, either about ourselves or about what's in front of us. It's the conversations we're having with our inner dialogue.
Exactly. It's our inner dialogue. Listen, metacognition, it's techno fucking babble, but understand it. Metacognition is, to the best of our fucking knowledge, a gift that only our species possesses on this planet. Metacognition, what the fuck does it mean? It means that we have the ability, our species, human beings, have the ability to think about what we are thinking about. What are you thinking about right now? Tell me what you want for breakfast. You think about it and go, I should have eggs. Oh, so you're thinking about eggs for breakfast. Or you're just thinking about what you should think about for breakfast or what you want for breakfast. You can become aware of your thoughts. Okay, that's powerful. Why? Because that means we can change our thoughts if we don't like it. That's programming. So self-talk is programming. Most people have we all do. We all have self-talk. Self-talk is always occurring in our inner dialogue, in our inner mind, whether you are aware of it or not. Sometimes it happens so quickly and so quietly, and it's done with such consistency that you are completely unaware. But self-talk is always, always happening. Every decision you make before that, there has been some internal dialogue. Okay? And that's coming from your emotions, how you feel about something, the beliefs that are connected to those things. So self-talk is powerful. Metacognition is what warriors do. It is what successful people do. It is what achievers do. It is what peak performers do. I don't care what field you're talking about. They become aware of the thoughts that dominate their internal dialogue. They journal their thoughts. We do this all the time. You spend a week at the journal and you journal your thoughts. You actually spend time thinking about what you're fucking thinking about so that the programming that's running, it's like getting in an elevator and there's this horrific fucking background, white noise, this background music that is playing so low you can barely hear it, but it is always there. You have to recognize what soundtrack is playing in your mind. Special operations guys use a term called step up. When missions are breaking, when shit's happening, they step the fuck up. Self-talk enhances performance under pressure. Step up. So we use the same thing. Tactical self-talk. Step up. Meaning what? What are you saying to yourself in a violent situation? Let me just give you one of the pieces. I want to give you one of the words. Well, there's really, and I want you guys to think about a piece of self-talk that you would give them to use for the new person to start taking control. So let me just give you two things here. One, you got to fucking write shit down. You don't need to over worry about every single word that you use self-talk in a day. It's overwhelming. You want to start to identify the chronic self-talk that comes out, positive and negative, and be honest with yourself. So if you're hit a point in the day where you're tired or you're just stressed, you go, oh man, I've been going since fucking 6 a.m. and it's 2 p.m. and I haven't even eaten lunch. I'm tired. That's self-talk. You're tired. You're saying to yourself, I'm tired. Doesn't matter if it's justifiable or not. You're saying I'm tired. There's a lot of peak performers that don't say they're tired. They say, oh, I'm getting a little low on juice. Not I'm tired. I'm exhausted. Oh man, I'm fucking toasted. I'm smoked. I'm fucking dead. I can barely move. You see how that shit is intensified to the negative? So you got to start fixing. So my thing would be start writing down and identify chronic self-talk that is happening viscerally, that has become programming. You have to journal and identify it. Now, one of the other pieces that I give you is something, this is the self-talk that I give to every single person that we train. And a lot of times I do it subconsciously at first. I don't tell them what I'm doing. I just start using this verbiage with them. I say it over and over again, and I build a neural association subconsciously. And then I reveal it to them at some point when I feel it benefits them the most. And then that becomes their tool and they can use it. And for most people, it works very well because the programming's been instilled in me. This is what was done for me. This is what I'm doing for other people. This is what I have found works. And the piece of self-talk is simply, it's time to fucking punch in. It's time to go to work. Those are synonymous for me. And so I'll explain something to somebody from day number 1 in training. This is what we're going to do. Here's the objectives. Here's what we're doing. Here's the strategy. Here's the tactics. Here are the tools. Do you get, are you tracking with me? Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay, we're going to get ready to do this. You feeling good? You clicked in? And they're like, yeah, I feel good. Okay, punch in and go to work. Okay, punch in and go to work. All right, it's time to punch in. Let's get after it. Go ahead. Let's punch in, go to work. I say this all the time. And the why I use this and why I use it every time I say, here, you can do, here's the task, here's the mission, here's the demands, and here's what I want you to do. Here's the commands. Punch in and go to work. Because it builds this connection. Because who the fuck punches in to go to work? The only people that punch in to go to work are professionals. Punch in and go to work means you fucking got this. Like that, just punch in and get the shit done. Everybody has experienced this, right? Everybody has had a task, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, cleaning up the fucking garage, the basement, doing something that you're less than excited to do. And you put it off and you fucking bitch and you moan and all this type of shit. And then finally one day you walk out there and you're just fucking fed up. Right? Necessity is not the mother of change, right? You don't change when it's necessary to change. You change when you can no longer tolerate it. When you change your standard, that's when you take. So you walk out into that fucking garage and you go, fuck it, let's just get this shit done. What did you just say to yourself? Fuck it, let's get this shit done, this stupid fucking shit. Let's just fucking do this and get it over with. That's a slightly negative way of saying, let's just punch the fuck in and go to work. I'm done. I'm done worrying about this. I'm done stressing about this. I'm done avoiding this. I'm done all this shit. Just punch in and go to work. In a crisis, I don't care whether you are super skilled or unskilled, when you can accept what the fuck is in front of you and stop running from your face. Say, well, this is what it is. I don't want this. I don't even know if I'm going to survive this. But you know what? If this is what it is what it is. I'm not emotional about it. Let's punch in and go to work. Let's fucking make it. Let's happen. Let's go. So that punch in and go to work, it is powerful when you tell yourself, next time you're tired, you're in bed, you don't want to get up in the morning, it's cold and you're tired and your body hurts. Oh, I worked up, I was late last night. Oh, I got to get up early to do that. Just tell yourself one thing. Just punch in and go to fucking work. Just get it fucking done. Let's go, punch in. And then get the fuck out of bed, put a shoe on, put your pants on and go to work. And when you say that, you divorce yourself from the result. You just make, what do I need to do? What's right in front of me right now? Punch in and go to work. So that is one piece of self-talk that I start programming people with that you can put. I put it on a little cue card for people. I have it on a cue card myself. And if I ever have a time where I'm like, man, I'm tired, I'm burning the can at both ends, my body's sore, I pin it up or have it right beside the bed. When I open my eyes, I say my first words, I'll look over and see it or I'll grab it and it just says, time to punch in. Sometimes I'll add a motherfucker to it. And it just reminds me, it's like, yeah, punch in, motherfucker, let's go. You don't got to like it, you just got to do it. And guess what? Boom. That changes my state. Now I become the type of person that fucking does shit. Just punch in and go to work. And guess what? Very, very quickly, I find myself doing it in a different state. Why? Because I've built the neural association through my training that when it's time to click in, when it's time to punch in and get into state, get into the ozone, my mental, my emotional, my physiological, and my physical all go, I know where we're supposed to be, right here in the fucking center. Because it's a conditioned response and the self-talk is a trigger. So you pull the trigger on your self-talk. Now you can use lots of other pieces of self-talk, lots of ways to do it. That's my piece of advice for people to start with. Dustin or Brad, you guys have anything specific that you would recommend for people or a piece of self-talk you can share?
You took mine.
Well, punch in and go to work and figure something else out.
I use one on my kids every day. You talked about using on other people.
Yep.
Every single day when my kids get out of the car, like I drop my kids off at school every day. And yeah, every single day when each one of them gets out of the car, it's like crush the day.
Yep.
Just crush the day.
Yep.
Crush the day. Like every single day. I don't know if they've ever noticed. I don't know if they care.
Yep.
I know subconsciously it's a good thing for them. I don't know how conscious they are of it, but every single day, that's what I do to them. Just crush the day.
Yeah,
love you, crush the day, and out they go, right? And just same as you said, you just keep hitting them with it, and eventually it's going to program their subconscious mind, and on some level, they're going to go in there into that school thinking like, I'm going to crush the day.
Yeah.
So
yeah, just real quick on that too, right? Like he's talking about using a piece of self-talk on his kids, which I do as well. His saying to his kids every day, crush it. What he's doing subconsciously is remember whatever is impressed and saturated in, meaning they hear it every single day for how many years now? Hear it every day. It's being impressed. It gets saturated into the subconscious. The subconscious is your programming. So what he can do one day, he can do it today, he can do it in a year from now, he can do it in 3 or 5 years from now. What he can do is he can explain the programming they have. You know when I say crush it, do you know what I mean by that? So we don't just want to survive a day. You want to thrive in a day. And we say crush it. You know what I mean? This, that. But that programming has been there, so that formulates a belief. So it's a belief that they didn't even know they had. Just like all of us when we're kids, we get programmed with the paradigms, the beliefs and the opinions and the values of all of those people around us, and we're too young to reject that. The subconscious cannot reject anything. The conscious mind can. But every day he says, crush the day, crush the day, crush the day. It builds a subconscious belief that a day is meant to be fucking crushed, not just have a good day. He's intensified it. Fucking crush the day.
or even worse, when people say, I hope you have a good day.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like they're opening the door to like,
100%.
your day might suck.
No, let's be honest. When you say, I hope you have a good day, what you're saying is, my expectation is that you will not have a good day. That is why I'm hoping that today is a one-off, that you actually have a good day. This is Neuro-Linguistic Programming 101. The power of words and phrases. And, we can go deeper with intensifiers and softeners and how you need to do this. But crush the day is one that he uses. And Brad said, like, for him, the time to punch in, time to go to work. Why did he choose that one as well? Because that's the program that we've used through our entire training. That's what we did. That's where he's like, fuck, because that's the accumulation. When you do all this other work on your self-talk and you're changing what you're saying to yourself and you learn how to step up under pressure, right? Self-talk enhances performance under pressure, and you learn how to give yourself good mission commands. You've got this. Move your feet. Stay focused. Drop left. Fall back. Stay relaxed. Watch your periphery. Do whatever the mission commands, whatever self-talk is most enhancing to that performance is the self-talk you use. And that is what you learn in good training. You were taught. When we need to give space, we have come on. We know how to tow people, how to move people, how to fight up geometric angles, right? But we need people to come towards us. So we have self-talk that's in line with that. And a fraction of a second later, when you got to take space, you got to seize the initiative, and you got to move through somebody like a fucking freight train, even though they outweigh you by 100 pounds, there's a piece of self-talk for that. So you got to learn these things, right? But when you learn how to control your thoughts and you sculpt your thoughts or your words with surgical precision, you develop this arsenal of language. And then you use the human gift of metacognition, meaning I can think about what I'm thinking about. And if I don't like something, or if it doesn't step up my performance, right, doesn't enhance my performance, I can go into this battle, map of tactical language that I have that enhances performance, and I can pull a piece out and go, this is appropriate. Again, a quarterback runs the play. He calls the plays. He's watching what's happening, and he calls the play, or the coaches call the play, but you figure it out, right? So you pull that in, boom, time to punch, and then punch in and go to fucking work, execute on this shit.
I'll share something real quick too, just because, one of the ones that I use is a very simple one, and it's okay. But what I want to explain about this is that it's not just something like, okay, it's very short, but when I feel it and I have the emotional attachment to it, it's not just like, okay, it's like, okay, this is what's happening. Okay, let's do it. Okay, like there's always, it's like the front end, because I could say, okay, it's time. Okay, well, I'll punch in then. But that okay is just like, okay. And that it gives me that level of acceptance.
100%.
It's like whatever's in front of me, okay, let's do it.
So what are you using? This is a very important point for people to recognize. What are you using? Okay. Okay is like, well, most words are like fuck, right? Fuck. Like, what's changing there?
Yeah, I'm using the inflection on how I say the word, and then that, to me, it's like the inflection is the attitude, and the attitude is the backstory, right? That I attach to it, that gives me the emotional feel, like, okay, fuck it, or like, okay, let's do it, or like, okay, you want to do that, then I'm gonna do this. Okay, like I don't need to fill in all the other words when I just put the inflection with the okay, because that it gives me the emotional feeling and the physiological connection to be like, all right then, okay.
Self-talk, developing language that is mission specific, okay, is huge. What Brad is talking about, remember the fundamental rule of the human species. It's not what you said, it's
how you say it.
Tone and inflection sends a different message. Remember, this is personal psychological warfare against ourselves. So it's not what you say to yourself, it's how you say it. And he's talking about one simple fucking word, okay, that gives him instantaneous acceptance. Okay. Just this, he's getting a similar effect of, it's time to punch in and go to work. Okay. And any word or phrases or mantras that you have, it is not what you say, it is how you say it, and you are saying it to yourself. So understand the power that it has. It is going to affect you. It is going to allow you to step up under pressure, right? To enhance your performance. Okay, so this is the first tool, is tactical self-talk. So hopefully we've painted a picture with that tool. Is there more to it? Clearly you should have a feeling that there's a tremendous amount of depth here. This is why, this is what my mentors did for me. They taught me a version of neuro-linguistic program, how to make it tactical, how to apply it to any crisis in my life. This is what I've taught to Brad and Dustin. This is what they've learned. This is what they share with other clients. This is what's working for us. This has worked for me in combat situations, and it's worked for me in life, and it has for them as well. Tool number 2, so we went from the psychological control, now we're going over to the emotional control, okay? And one of the things that helps us with emotional control, the second tool, is tactical performance imagery. Now, can you guys, either one of you real quick, just give me a very quick breakdown of what performance imagery is?
Well, it's just picturing an outcome in your mind. So seeing it before you're able to do it, essentially, but also seeing it in the way you want to do it. So you're obviously going to be imaging yourself doing something to a standard that you've set or someone has set for you. And so being able to see yourself doing it before you're actually attempting or trying to do it.
Okay. Very, very good. Very simple. Most people go, okay, I know I get what you guys are talking about, imagery, seeing it in the theater of your mind. Now, I'm just going to try and make this quick, and then I want you guys to jump in, and if you have any examples of how you do this, feel free to please jump in and do this. But he's talking about seeing yourself doing something or how you want something to be done. what we actually do is help people build a theater of their mind. Like you have to build it like it is a command center. You're going to take control over this shit. So you actually build the theater of your mind. So we talk a lot and reference a lot. Okay, go into the theater of your mind and image this scenario, this strategy, this tactic. See yourself doing it, seeing how it could break down, seeing yourself problem solving, all these different things. What I want to do to shortcut this for people to really try to motivate you to use this tool and explore this tool, right? Because for a lot of people, it's kind of hokey shit, is understand this. Tactical performance imagery, if I could sum that up with one word other than imagery, it would be symbols. The mind works in symbols. Cat. Nobody right now, when I said cat, thought of the letters C-A-T. You either pictured, you pictured a cat, but did you picture a house pet? Or did you picture a lion? Did you picture a panther or a jaguar? Now, most people in North America would picture a house cat, because I said cat, I didn't say lion. But if you went to Africa and you said cat, most people probably think, oh, big cat. They'd probably think lion. If you went into the jungles in some other part of the world, they'd probably think a jaguar or a panther or something. Why? Because we can have different symbols for things, but the mind always works in images. It always has to attach a symbol. Okay? So when we're talking about performance imagery, there's a symbol attached. If I say knife fight, if I say mass attack, I say ground fighting, the symbols, the images that just popped into the theater of your mind for many people will remain unknown. They don't know what image went on their mind. Knife fight, what? They see a butter knife. And then they see someone maybe stabbing somebody with a butter knife, or they see a big kitchen butcher knife. And they see someone or they see Halloween the movie, or they see Jason Voorhees with the machete. Because these are the symbols. You go, that's my reference point. The mind has to have some image in it. So imagine for a second if how detrimental or enhancing a symbol or image can be if you programmed it. Right? Like this is very powerful. Like I think the best example I can give of people, and this is what we do. This is my advice for how to use performance imagery. One way that I would start with somebody is I take a still image out of a violent assault. So it's a picture of somebody maybe being stabbed. Something pretty violent. But it's clear. This person is stabbing that person. And in that, I ask them to narrate for me, explain to me what is happening in this picture. And most people will narrate it from the side of the individual, the so-called victim, the person being stabbed. They say, oh my God, this guy has a knife and he's attacking this poor guy and he's stabbing it into his neck. He's murdering him. He's killing, he's whatever it is. He's overwhelming him. It's dark out. It's at night. Oh my God, is that his kids in the background? Oh, it's horrible. They just paint this negative picture. And then I can say to them, well, what I see is I see the wife and the kids in the background. I'll just make sure Dustin get back on here. And I see this guy who's being stabbed was attacking that family and threatening the life of those individuals, of his family. This man has brandished his knife or found the knife or grabbed the knife, and he is defending himself. And he unfortunately is in the position where he must take life to preserve life. So the symbolism I have is the symbolism of a good moral husband or wife defending because they have no recourse. They could not remove themselves. I also see that just off screen, what you didn't see was the 3 or 4 other individuals who were also attacking this family. And this man is a hero and in using that in a legally and morally justified manner to protect himself. Now, the 2 different symbols, and that, in fact, of course, is the image. That image is taken out of that scenario. So that's not hypothetical. That is true fact. But the fact that most people that would look at, the average person that looks at that, automatically assumes the man with the knife is the bad guy. Because they have no imagery for what it's like to have to use the tool of violence to defend life. Do you see how do you see how that can enhance my performance? If the imagery that I have, I carry a knife. Why? Because it's man's oldest tool. I carry a knife because it is, in fact, just that. It is a tool. I have used that tool. You can use that tool to cut a seatbelt in a car accident to free somebody and save their life. Yet people would look and say, why do you have such a big, aggressively serrated knife? Because you know what you need to cut through seatbelts or to cut clothing off people on an accident scene so that you could administer the tourniquet or pressure in first aid that could save people's lives? Why do you have a fixed blade, this long fixed blade? Because you know what it's like to have to pry open a door on a building that's caught on fire or your neighbor's house that's been on fire, and you have to smash a window and you got to pry on things and you got to puncture things, and I don't want this little flip blade with a hinge that often breaks. And people are like, what? Because the symbolism of a knife that has serrations on it that's fixed blade goes to the negative. Well, then how the hell are you ever going to defend yourself and pick up a tool and use it? And the knife is a very good way to defend yourself when it is legally and morally justified to do that. Now, that's just an example, but we're back to the power of imagery, because I can't sit here. None of us can sit here in a short time frame and help you program the imagery you need when you got to zone away from multiple opponents or when you got to do the avalanche, because you don't know that. But what I'm saying is, you better start recognizing that you have a symbol for every aspect of a fight or violence. When I said jiu-jitsu, picturing yourself on the ground, anybody that does jiu-jitsu or seen UFC or the Gracies or whatever automatically has an image of two guys in a gi or two guys in their rash guards rolling around trying to armbar each other, mount, guard, cross-side, typically probably like a guard position or mount, which is optically the most known blueprint. That's the symbolism for jiu-jitsu. Cauliflowered ears is what a lot of people thought of. These are the symbols. And so automatically, if you go on the ground, you start modeling the symbol. The imagery is what guides you to what to do. So imagine being in the middle of a street assault with 5 guys, 3 guys stomping, kicking, booting, and you're pulling some guard or doing some guard pass from jiu-jitsu. You get what I mean? Like, but why are you doing that? Because that's the blueprint. That's the imagery. That's the symbolism in your mind. But if all of a sudden you have, and again, if you have to pull a knife out or you grab a steak knife out of a table because 4 or 5 guys got your wife by the throat and by the hair and they're ripping her to clothes and dragging her out of a fucking building, and you happen to grab a butcher knife or a butter knife or whatever the fuck you can grab, the second you put that in your hands and you go at those guys in an attempt to save your wife's life, the image that's flashing on the screen of your mind is knives are used by murderers. And so you hesitate because your brain goes, but you're not a murderer. Or you do it subconsciously without thought process, and after you get hit with the guilt and horror because the imagery, the beliefs that you have been built up over a lifetime has told you that knives are used by murderers. That's your imagery. So your imagery can cause post-traumatic stress disorder because you didn't act in accordance with your conscience, because your conscience and your beliefs are reflected by the images that are flashed on the theater of your mind. What's a good Christian? We didn't think of the values. We didn't think of the 10 Commandments. We thought a symbolism went up of what a person looks like and how they act and how, but there's symbolism. That's imagery. What comes up when I start to go in my rant about imagery?
For me, like, even just sitting here, I'm imaging myself actually running through a lot of our strategies. Like for me, it's just because we've done it so many times. Like everything that we do is imagery in some way, shape, or form. You know, and it's like, is it something that we've controlled, or are we, like you said, are we letting our past experience dictate and direct how we see ourselves, or is this something that we're controlling? It's the same with the self-talk, right?
100%.
But like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just, as you're talking, especially about that scenario, I actually had myself in that scenario when you're explaining it to the audience, because it was so clear, and I could put myself there, right? So.
And so you've done the work to change the blueprints. But people act like, and don't confuse this, when we do imagery, when we understand the images and we're using images to save and to use violence as a tool, which ultimately may mean taking the life of somebody That has left us no choice. Sometimes you have to take life to preserve life, but we're always talking about when legally and morally justified. But the images I have of a man with a knife are not the bad guy with the knife. I understand that intellectually. I have studied and seen what they do, but I have the symbolism for a good man, just like a soldier on a battlefield, a righteous man, a protector that is moving towards the sound of gunfire with his gun out. I see him. I don't identify with the guy going through the school shooting our children. I see the armed civilian who has his concealed carry, where legal in our part of the world. I see a teacher who picks up a knife or picks up something sharp out of her lunch kit, and I see them going at that guy and surgically using the tool of violence to save my child. That's the image you have to have, because you are that warrior. If you're going to do that and you don't have that imagery, if you not have built those blueprints, but there's a safety catch on that, isn't there? Because that is tempered with the moral and legal justification of violence. That's why we study that. So you do not see yourself committing atrocities. Your actions are not fueled by hatred. So the blueprints, the imagery, the self-talk, as these two powerful things combine to enhance your performance under pressure. Again, this is what we need people to understand. This is why good training creates the blueprints, and they don't wait for them just to happen over 20 years of training. We program and give you those images from the beginning. We start consciously aware because we're using psychological warfare against you to help bulletproof your mind. Because in the battle against fucking evil, man, you better be bulletproof. You better have the tools, and you need to understand the psychological warfare that you use on yourself. You gain control through the awareness, and you engage in it every single day to build that mental toughness. So the performance imagery is absolutely an essential part of this equation. Now, again, we could spend a whole 15 podcasts talking about performance imagery. So tactical self-talk, performance imagery, those are the top two quadrants. When those things are bulletproof, when you have control of those, they push you to the O zone, the optimal zone of natural excellence. The bottom right is physiology. Why is it important to control our physiology, and how is this different? It is absolutely interconnected. This is all interconnected. But how is it different than just the psychology, and how is it different than the emotional side of it? So the mental and the emotional, the physiology is its own thing, and it is because we are born with an innate survival system. So why is physiological control a part of mental toughness? Can you guys break it down a little bit for me, what it is and why it's important?
Well, I think the other areas, you can tend to be too negative in your self-talk or ineffective at performance imagery or just unaware of it completely. But when it comes to physiology, because like you said, we have this innate survival response system. Because of that, and because it's tied to all our adrenaline and just our whole sympathetic nervous system, there's the fear or risk, the chance that could actually spiral out of control. Where it's there and it's meant to be there to help us, but if you don't understand how it works, it can actually get you killed.
Okay, so let me just clarify, and Brad, feel free to jump into anything. What you're saying, Dustin, is that as the human species, as a human being, not just a man, but a human being, if I even perceive a threat, if my sensory faculties, I see, I hear, I feel, I taste or I smell anything that could potentially hurt me, whether it's real or not, whether I'm just imagining it or not, my body is going to have a chemical, physiological change. Even if it's not real, even if it turned out, I wake up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. because I think I smell smoke, and my brain goes, fucking house is on fire, and all of a sudden I've got this chemical, I've got adrenaline and cortisol and all this shit going on. Is that what you're saying? That's what happens?
100%. And like you said, and just to emphasize it, you said it, but it's like you just have to believe that it's there. It makes no difference whether it's actually there or not. If you believe there's a threat there, the response can be just as big or as catastrophic as if the threat was actually there.
And that is what most people call what? The fight-flight response. which is a gross oversimplification. Why is that an oversimplification, Brad? Why do we say that? What do we teach people about the fight-flight response? Which is true, but what else do we tend to expand on for people? Oh, we lost your sound.
Sorry, I had muted.
Yeah, that's okay.
For one, it's not the society that we live in. We don't live in a kill or be killed. There's more of a dichotomy to that fight, flight, posture, submit, right? Because, it's like we give the example. It's like, well, any threat, any young male baby that's going to threaten us as they grow is like, well, you would just kill that baby. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not the way of the world that we live in. So, and it's not our first responses as well, right?
Yeah.
People more tend to posture or submit before they go to fight and flight, right?
Yes.
So.
Yeah. It's just important to understand that what we're getting at is that there is this arousal level, physiological arousal level. And people will say it's the fight, flight, freeze response. But understand that our bodies are going to, I call it like your Iron Man suit. If you even think there's a threat, your body is going to start to mobilize its resources. It's going to redirect blood flow. It is going to shut blood off to the extremities, vasoconstriction. It is going to funnel the extra blood to the bigger muscle groups, the lungs, things like that, the quads, getting us ready to fight or flee, all true. The reduced blood flow is to help us in case we get, scratched, bit, shot, stabbed. We don't just bleed out to death. It's going to start to change the shape of your eye. It's going to stop saliva production. You can blow the ballast, meaning you can urinate or defecate because your body doesn't want to waste precious energy when it comes to survival on fucking sphincter control or bladder control. All of these different things, you can have loss of hearing because your eyes, more blood's being funneled to the eyes for survival, and you're orientating on a target, or in the middle of the night when you can't see well, your hearing intensifies. Our body is this miraculous system that wants to aid us in our own survival. But can you imagine having lived your entire life in a first world country like most people that would listen to this have, where you do not have to fight every day? When was the last time your innate survival mechanism was activated consistently enough and for a long enough period of time that you actually learned how to control it? I mean, you take somebody that goes, my dad's dad used to be a pilot, and he was one of the best. Flying's in my blood. But you haven't flown in 15 generations. You know what I mean? Like, our survival system is there. And yes, we use it every day and it's always on. It's like you walk to the edge of a giant cliff and your body is kind of pulling you back and you're looking over. You're curious, you want to look over, but your body's like, oh, and you got the shakes and adrenaline. We experience elements of this all the time, but they tend not to be so closely neuroassociated to that of a threat. When it is like we go, holy fuck, I might die here. This other member of my species may murder me today, right now. That is different. When that activates and that threat, that pressure from the interpersonal human aggression is there, it's very different. And that, if you do not understand how to control it, can overwhelm you, which is why they'll say fight, flee, or freeze. Because the system goes what we call condition black, it gets overwhelmed. So it's a little deeper than that. But for right now, there are tools that help us take control over the system. The one thing that I would share right now, because I want this to be a resource for people to listen to with answers, not just explanations. One of the things is what we call false fear, right? I'll give you just one, and if the guys can think of one other one real quick, that's fine, or just echo or add on to what I'm saying. But false fear is this. As a man, you perceive a threat. Now, maybe let's say the threat's real. Doesn't matter low level, mid, or high level. Let's just say it's a mid-level threat, right? Obviously with the possibility of escalating. But mid-level threat, and all of a sudden, you have butterflies in your stomach, you've got spaghetti legs, and you can't feel your hands. Just those things are often interconnected. Butterflies in the stomach. See, why I said that is because this is the false evidence that appears real. As a child, if you had butterflies in your stomach, you might admit that when you're a 6-year-old boy. You would probably not admit that when you were a 16-year-old young man. And you're probably sure as shit not going to admit that when you're a 35, 45-year-old man. Because butterflies in your stomach is the equation or equals being a fucking pussy. I got the butterflies. I can't feel my legs. I got spaghetti legs. I can't feel my arms. You will not hear most men saying that. Right? Why? Because it's more of a synonym for fucking weakness. But get this. Special operations soldiers, right? Warriors, people that are trained for the battlefield, when they feel the quote unquote butterflies, which can equate to weakness, they go, digestion shutting down. My body's not going to waste time digesting and processing food right now. That's all going to shut down. The stomach is going to tighten up. The acid structure, all that's going to change. I say, I can't feel my legs. I got spaghetti legs. I can't feel my legs. No, man. The body is pulling blood away from the extremities, which is why I can't feel my legs as well, and I can't feel my hands or my arms quite as well, because that blood is being redirected and put into the bigger muscle groups to help me fight or flee or whatever you got to do. But also what it's doing is say, listen, when you can't feel your hands as well and you can't feel your legs as well, and fucking bullets are flying or somebody's slashing or scratching or biting, you go, listen, if I take wound on my extremities, I'm not going to bleed out right away, or it's less likely that I'll bleed out right away. Because the body was smart enough to pull all that away. So yes, you lose tactile sensation. Do you see how different just those reframes are? A police officer on the job who finds himself in a critical situation, who does not understand why he can't feel his legs and while his stomach is doing flip-flops and all that shit, or can't feel his hands, can't feel his firearm, can't feel his radio, that thinks that's all means he's a pussy, and that if anybody else finds out, they're going to fucking laugh at him. He's not a real fucking man. Do you think that's going to enhance his performance, or do you think that's going to cause a negative spiral that could get him and other innocent people killed? Well, I think the answer is clear. But a switched on operator who goes, holy fuck, look at the situation that I'm in. Look at the threat that I'm facing, and I can feel everything that's happening. My body is preparing for battle. Blood is being pulled away from my extremities. It is making me far more fucking durable. It is fueling bigger muscle groups and fueling and allowing for more oxygen in my lung and my heart. Like, this is what it's happening, man. Like, it's literally like the Iron Man suit activating. If you didn't understand what the Iron Man suit was doing and you got in the Iron Man suit, it's some of the shit it's going to do, you're going to think it's going to kill you. So it's just a simple analogy, but this is why it's so important to understand the physiology. If you don't understand it, if you have a false fear around it, false evidence appearing real, or false expectations that appear real, that will kill you. You got to see it for what it is and understand it. That's step number one. Is recognize that the stuff your body is experiencing, the chemical, physiological changes, are by design. God, nature of the universe, gave us this gift that has allowed us as a species to stay the fuck alive and perpetuate. 200,000-year-old survival mechanism inside of us, but we're not living 200,000 years ago when we had to survive surrounded by alpha predators. We're living in modern times where most people don't even understand what the fuck is happening. And worse yet, society has labeled shit. If I put a picture of a soldier on the screen right now, tucked down behind a tank, right? People would look and go, holy fuck, look at the dust and the debris. That guy's in chaos right now. What a brave soldier. And then I flip to the scene 2 of that, and he's pissing his pants. They would go, oh, look at that guy. He's fucking done. The first soldier, you know what I mean? Same guy, hadn't pissed himself. They go, look at that brave man. Second picture, holy fuck, he's pissing himself. He's fucked. Terrified, coward. Third picture, when his body released that so he didn't have to concentrate on trying to hold bladder control, and he knew that and he wasn't affected by it, he's fucking charging up the hill. That is what it is about. I lost my 2 co-hosts. They maybe got bored and hung up on me because I'm going along with this one. But that is a difference, isn't it? To recognize the false fear. Okay, so I'll see if they jump back on or not here. But the last one that I'll share with everybody, and I'm just going to kick it over and I'll go solo until they jump back on. The last one I'm going to share with everybody is tactical arousal control techniques. This is the 4th tool. There's Dustin. We'll let him back in here and see if he gets on. So the tactical arousal control. So remember, tactical self-talk, tactical performance imagery, Actually, the third one is what we call a cognitive counter response. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because a cognitive counter response is how we interrupt negative thought patterns. And this is very simple and very quick, and I'll kind of get ready to wrap this one up. But a cognitive counter response is control follows awareness, meaning metacognition. We have the ability to think about what we're thinking about. If and when, not if, when I discover negative self-talk, negative symbolism, performance imagery, I have a very specific tool. And I'm just going to share the process. Here's what it is. When you become aware of a negative thought, don't berate yourself. Don't feel like you're a fucking failure. Don't feel like you're a pussy. Don't feel like any of the negative shit. The second you become aware, interrupt it, replace it, and repeat. Interrupt, replace, repeat. Meaning, I got a negative thought. Oh, fuck, Greg, man, you're so fucking tired, man. Like, you can't fucking do this. Oh, you're getting old. You used to be able to do this shit. Then you go, what the fuck am I saying, man? No wonder I'm struggling here because I'm constantly telling myself that, yeah, I used to be able to do this, but now I'm too fucking old. Well, why is this so hard today? Maybe I'm not as strong as I thought I was or used to be, whatever it is. I become aware. I interrupt it. I literally flash a stop sign in the theater of mind. Just telling myself, fucking stop, man. Stop this shit right now. You have to interrupt it. You cannot just replace. You have to interrupt the negative thought. If I told you right now not to think of white sandy beach, don't think of a white sandy beach with a beautiful blue clear ocean. Do not think of that sandy beach. Do not see the sun beating down on it. Do not feel how hot that beautiful sand is when you step on it. Don't think of that. Don't think of the beautiful palm tree. Do not think of the beautiful ladies in the bikinis, maybe missing the tops or not. Do not think of any of this stuff. Well, of course, your brain starts thinking about it. Stop thinking about it. To interrupt that thought, not that you would want to, but if you did want to, you would have to say, stop. You have to tell your brain, stop, 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 interrupt this, stop. But the second that you stop focusing on the stop sign, it's going to probably go back to the white sandy beaches. You go, fuck, now you get me thinking about sandy beaches, and that led me to thinking about beer, and that led me thinking about blah, 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 blah. You got to interrupt it, stop. And then you got to replace it. Replace it with what? What do you want to focus in on? Focus on the mission at hand. So what's the thought? Stop, stop, stop. Interrupt it. Stop. Loud, blaring horn. Stop, stop, stop. Very aggressive. Alpha commands. Stop. And then I replace. Focus. And I replace it on the mission command. What am I thinking about? Do this. Move your feet. Move your feet. Take up space. Give space. Grab the weapon. Access the tool. Keep moving. Keep moving. Boom. Get shot. Holy fuck, my arm. I can't feel my arm. Holy fuck, that's a lot of blood. Oh my God, I'm probably going to die. That's deep red blood. It's probably an arterial hit. Oh my God, it hurts like hell. What does that fucking mean? Stop. You're still in the fucking fight. Stop. Interrupt it. Punch in and go to work. Move your fucking feet. Get your firearm. Get access to your knife. Grab the tourniquet. What's the next thing in it? So once you become aware of a negative thought, you don't berate yourself. You don't freak the fuck out. You're human. You interrupt it by being aggressive and stop, 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 stop. Replace it, and then you fucking repeat. You repeat it because that negative thought is no joke. Negative thoughts are fucking powerful. For every one negative comment someone says to you, it can take 19 positive thoughts to just get you back to zero, get back to balance. So a negative thought is not some weak-ass adversary. A negative thought, a negative self-thought, a negative global thought, whatever. Negative thoughts are powerful, man. You got to interrupt that shit, which is why you have to learn to use the psychological warfare of learning a cognitive counter response. You got to learn to interrupt. You got to practice and train that shit. And there's no better time because all of us experience hundreds, if not probably thousands of negative thoughts every single day. Hopefully not, but depends how much you've been training your control of your self-talk. But most of us have plenty of opportunities to find negative thoughts, become aware, interrupt them. Control follows awareness. Interrupt, replace, and then fucking repeat. It's shampoo, man. Repeat. Rinse and repeat. As many times as you need to. Okay, so that's tool number 3, the cognitive counter response. The fourth and final tool is the tactical arousal control techniques. Meaning what? Well, exactly what it sounds like. They are arousal control techniques. Whether it's psychological arousal, we got negative self-talk, that's fucking up our physiology, fucking up our mind, fucking up our emotions. whether it's the emotions that are coming first and the emotions are negative. I feel fear, I feel humiliation, I feel embarrassment, I feel anger, I feel frustration, I feel stress and anxiety. If that's what's happening, then we have to control those arousals. So what are the techniques that help us emotionally? What are the techniques that help us physiologically? Okay, so there are a number of these, and I think we alluded in the beginning that these tools, different tools, are going to have more, like some people are going to like this tool, some people like that tool, some people are going to like a combination of the tools. You just want to start to learn the tools. So I just want to give you a couple, I'll give you one, each of the guys will give you one, and then that's where we'll kind of start to wrap up for tonight. The number one I have to give you, it is the most obvious, it is the most heard of, it is the most known, but it has to be said, is breathing. Now, here's how I explain breathing, and I'll be very to the point with this. There's two parts to our nervous system, right? The autonomic part, the part we can't control, meaning like our breathing, our heart rate, our blood pressure, the respiratory, all that stuff. It's automatic. It's just regulating itself right now. Your resting heart rate is where it's at. You're breathing. You're not having to think about it. It's automatic. And then there's the somatic part of our nervous system, meaning the part I control. Take your hand and close your hand and keep it closed. Open your hand, keep it open. Blink your eyes, blink, 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 blink. You're in the somatic part of your nervous system. We can control those things. When we find ourselves in a stress response, we want to be in our ozone. We already talked about how physiologically our body's doing one thing. If we're not in control of our thoughts are doing one thing because the emotions are doing their own thing. It's kind of this autonomic part until you start programming language, programming emotions, and regulating and controlling physiology. So what I want, the breathing is the link between what is happening automatically, whether it's through our subconscious programming or physiological reaction. Breathing, breath, brings it from the autonomic part of the nervous system and puts it into the somatic, the part we cannot control or we don't control because it's automatic, to the part we can control. So you can, like, open your hand, now close your hand and keep it closed, or blink. You can have that type of control, a light switch. Breathing is powerful. Now, here's what I'd say to you. People say, oh, perfect, that's great. I'm an expert at breathing. I've been doing it the entire podcast, just sitting here breathing. There's a difference between breathing and breath. In a combat situation, in a stress situation of life, you ever notice somebody's breathing change? You've been sitting here breathing the whole time, autonomically, autopilot. But if all of a sudden you smell smoke and you holy fuck, your eyes get big, you have this like, is the fucking house on fire? What the fuck was that? Does that breath, does that breathing pattern reflect my expressions and my gestures? What the fuck? Somebody kicks down the door, what the fuck? And you're holding your breath. In stress, right under pressure, bodies and people will react, and your breathing, which you're an expert at, will model it. It'll model, what do you think my self-talk is? What the fuck? If you can't see my face, I have a big pie-eyed, dumb look on my face going, what the fuck is that? And so my breath is going to model the expression on my face. If all of a sudden I make a fucking angry face and I get intense with my face and my emotions and start piercing my lips and grinding my fucking teeth, my breath mirrors my expressions and my gestures, my physiology and my tonality. If I start talking like, what the fuck are you think you're fucking doing? You can almost hear the shortness or compression of my breath because I'm getting fucking angry. Now, if that's happening, fear or anger, you are not using tactical breathing. Tactical breath is purposeful. And there's what we call a combat breath. Breathing in through the nose for 4. Holding full for 4. Breathe out through the mouth for 4 and holding empty for 4. So it's just 4 count breathing. Now you can do this if you have a little bit of time, because breathing in for 4, holding for 4, breathe out for 4, and hold empty for 4, and repeating that 3 times will change your entire state. It'll impact your self-talk, it'll impact your emotional state, it'll impact your physiology, and therefore it'll impact the physical control of your body and your actions, and that's a 4 count, or what we call a combat breath. Now, you can also do something that is quicker, where I don't have time. The guy standing there trying to threaten my life and threaten my kid's life, say, hang on for 1 second while I got to breathe in through my nose, 2, 3, 4, hold full 2, 3, 4. Just wait a second, I'm getting there. Of course, you're not going to do that. You're going to do a battle breath. You're going to do something, we just breathe in. You're going to breathe in quick. And when you breathe in quick, there's a slight little pause at the top, and there's a command that goes with it. You just breathe in, punch in. Breathe in, go to work. Breathe in, move your feet. Breathe in, fucking engage. Breathe in, give space. Whatever it is. But there's this. You breathe, and your breath is connected to the tonality of your self-talk. Your breath is connected to your emotions. So I'm just trying to give you really quickly how the tool of breath work is so important. And it's so funny because people will spend years trying to learn to control and regulate their breath through yoga and all these different things, which is great. Breath work is awesome. And many operators, they use yoga, they use like William Hoth stuff, they use different breathing apps, they use all this stuff. Seal Fit, Mark Devine, he has a ton of breath work and breath control. He's big on this, ex-Navy SEAL guy. And it is all powerful and it is all good, but you've got to put the work into breath. That is the link. So the number one tactical arousal control technique I can give you is explore, learn, and develop breath work. Okay, lots of resources out there, but you got to learn to do that. And we specifically in our system, we teach it connected to tactical self-talk and imagery. I link your symbols and your language, the neurolisting program, I link those into the breath so they become one thing. So whatever you say in your head, that fucking okay, that punch in, that whatever it is, it gets linked. And that way your breath is exactly where you need it to be as you're shifting through the physiology. So that's mine that I'd share. Dustin or Brad, you guys have one you want to share with everybody?
Yeah. Along the same line of tying everything together, I mean, we often, all of us have different physical neuro associations that we build, and especially tying those to our tactical self-talk and our tactical performance imagery. So things like whether it's snapping your fingers, you know what I mean? So if you train yourself to get clicked into a certain state for, again, whatever it is you're doing, and you just pick a physical cue. So for some people, it's snapping your fingers. One of mine is tapping my leg. Every time I say to myself, punch in, time to go to work. Every single time, double tap my leg. Every time. And I just build that and build that and build that over the years. So then I don't even have to say it. I can just double tap my leg, and right away my whole state shifts to punch in and go to work. But it's built through that physical neuro association. So same thing, you can build them to bring yourself up. You can build them to bring yourself down. Same as the breath work, same kind of idea. You might need a breath to try and bring your arousal down. Same thing, you could develop a physical neuro association to then bring your arousal down, opposed to bringing it up.
100%. We call those a lot of times triggers. So physical triggers, neuroassociation, he's building a trigger. Like you say, once you're in the state, for whatever state you need, if he needs to be like the sniper and more relaxed and calm and slowing his breath down, when he gets into that state during training, he does something specifically. It could be an elastic band and you snap the elastic band onto your wrist. It can be you tug at your ear. It could be you tap your leg. Something typically simple, something nondescript, something that is congruous with what you're doing in that moment, and you build that, and that becomes the link, like Pavlov's dog. You ring the bell, introduce the food, the dog salivate. Eventually, you just ring the bell, the dog salivates because he built the neuro association, so it kicks him into state. Right? So that's called operant conditioning, stimulus response. He's built a physical trigger, right? And that's connected to his self-talk, connected to his imagery, and connected to arousal level. And that's a beautiful one to share. So you're creating neuro associations and physical triggers. It's beautiful. It's perfect. Brad, what one do you have?
Yeah, I'll share one that I like to use a lot. I know that you guys do too, and that's cue imaging, right? So cue imaging, let me give you an example. For me, if I am staging for training or for whatever we're happening to be doing, and let's say that I need to get a little bit more juice in my legs, I have an image for myself where I'll have like nuclear fuel cells that are in my quads and my hamstrings, just so I could. And when I attach that image to that, and that image is like they're just full of energy, they're full of power, they're full of everything that I need. And as I keep working that, it's like I overlay that, and I actually see that my legs have the fuel cells overlaid on them, right? So it's what we use. So the fuel cells to me represent energy, right? I could have something like, if I'm stretching out, something like that, I have like my calves like an elastic band that's just kind of coming back to kind of release some of that stretch. So we can take things that have a certain characteristics and overlay them onto certain parts of our body. That could be also something when we're doing or avalanche, where we might have to overlay a certain characteristic into one of our specific avalanche tools, right? So it's overlaying an image over top of like our body, or to enhance those characteristics to something that we're actually trying to do.
It's beautiful. Q imaging is powerful. I'm glad you picked that one. There's a bunch of stuff you got to choose from, but yes, we all use it. Q imaging is super huge. Again, I've seen Q imaging. It's worked for me. I've used this with a lot of our clients, where you know they're battling a self-image problem. You know, something where they're like, oh, I'm not quick on my feet. You know, I'm a little more like a rock than I am like a light feather, or something. Like, you know, how I move. I'm plodding and slow. And you use Q imaging to be like, yeah, but you understand like this, like how a cheetah, you know, how fast a cheetah is, or how explosive, or how a jackrabbit moves side to side, or whatever it doesn't have to be an animal. It can be any type of, like you said, use power cells. You can use electricity surging through your body. And it gives the brain, remember, symbolism. It's like how tone and inflection in your voice sends a very different message. I don't have to tell you you're stupid. I just have to talk to you like you're stupid, right? The tone, the inflection, and you'll go, what, you fucking calling me stupid? And I'll be like, I never said that. So no, you didn't say it, but it's how you're talking to me. So you can use Q imaging to take on the characteristics where you go, I don't have the self-belief like that. But I completely understand, man, the imaging of those nuclear power cells in your legs. And the second you start overlaying that onto you, your body goes, okay, I get what we're driving for here. I get the energy, the vitality that I want to bring to this situation. And again, remember, that can go for up or that can go for down. Mm-hmm. Right? There's special forces guys that before a mission, when they're about to go out, some guys are they're pumping fucking rock music in their head, because music is another one. And other guys are sitting in an office or sitting in the back corner by themselves with the lights dim, making a quick personal phone call and talking to their 4-year-old daughter, and they're sitting there coloring. And you think, what the fuck, man? Are these guys going to the same mission? What the hell is this guy doing? And that guy is relaxing. He is calming his state and talking to his child and doing something childlike like coloring just allows him to weaponize his focus, bring his arousal down. And he can see himself, he can use Q imaging, he can overlay and see himself relaxed, see himself, fuck whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it's weird, just like Jason Voorhees. You know, Jason never ran. Motherfucker walked everywhere, right? In Friday the 13th movies, that guy never ran. Guy never broke a sweat, murdered tons of people, never broke a sweat. But he had this calmness, this ice to him, this ruthlessness to him. But somebody can, in a weird way, see that, and they're not identifying with the psychopathic killer. They're identifying with the sense of like slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And they're overlaying that. Just get mission focused, precision, skill, right? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And they overlay. So Q imaging is very, very powerful. Okay, we talked about music. There's selective association, hanging out with people that best mirror the qualities that you need. There's lots of different tactical realms of control techniques, but I wanted to make sure that you had at least an understanding with a couple of options. Look into breath work, right? Look into the the Q imaging. And Dustin, what did you say again? Yours was, the triggers. Yeah, building the neuroassociations, the operant conditioning, building the triggers. Get into state and build a physical trigger that is connected to the state. All you have to do in a time of crisis is double tap, pull the trigger, the physiological cue or the physical cue, and that will snap you into the state to get you to punch in and go to work. That'll snap you right into the ozone.
There's such an anchor.
Oh,
for
it's huge.
They're amazing.
It's huge. Okay, so overview. I know that we went definitely a lot longer with this one, but I wanted this to be a resource. So please, like I said, save this, add it to your favorites, bookmark it. Hearing it once is not enough. I have given this lecture over 30 years, thousands of times. These guys have sat through it thousands of times, given it themselves the hundreds of times. It is so important because this is a psychological warfare launched by you against you. Because mental toughness does not just fucking happen. We have to be in control of it. We have to understand the tools. So you need to hit your state, know what your state is, your ozone, your optimal zone of natural excellence, understand where you perform best. Okay, in each of the tasks, in each of the missions you may have to engage in, whether it's combat or life, being a husband, being a father, all that type of stuff. and then use the PsyOps tools. 1, use your tactical self-talk. 2, use your performance imagery, your tactical performance imagery. 3, practice and develop and strengthen a cognitive counter response. Interrupt, replace, repeat. And then 4th, use and learn different tactical arousal control techniques like breath, like building neuroassociations and physical triggers, and cue imaging, and music, and selective association, and tactical muscle relaxation, and all the other myriad of tactical arousal control techniques that are out there. If you do not know them, find somebody who does. Learn them, practice them, and the more that you engage in this type of PsyOps against yourself, the less an external enemy or force or energy can do to harm you. Because it is not by coincidence that people are mentally tough. The very best in the world build the badass motherfucker that stares back in the mirror every single day. This is how we are bulletproofing our mind every single day. Tomorrow morning, well, before I go to bed, I have a nighttime routine that helps balance all of these. It's psychological warfare. It balances all of these 4 areas. I go to sleep. The second I come back into conscious awareness, and the second you guys wake up, we're doing what in the morning?
Prime time.
Prime time routine, psychological warfare. Before bed, at night, and multiple times during the day, we use these. It's automatic for us. So this is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you guys for hanging with me tonight. Extra long session. Again, I just hope people use this as a reference. We're documenting how we have done this, how I was definitely not a mentally tough person. There was nothing about my upbringing that lent it, like, I was just average, normal person, and I would say on a scale of 1 to 10 mental toughness, I was probably 3 or 4. And that's what most people probably are. Maybe a little less, whatever. But that has changed because of this process, so I'm very grateful to be able to share it. So thank you guys so much for your advice and your wisdom and your experience over the years and sharing that with everybody. So that's it, everybody. Stay safe, stay weaponized. Like, share, comment. Please pass this on to anyone that you know can benefit from us. Help us achieve our goal of weaponizing the world, and we will go from there. So stay safe, stay weaponized. Chat again soon, everybody. Hey, thanks so much for listening. And listen, if you found this content valuable, here's 3 different ways that I can help you weaponize for free. First, grab a free copy of my ebook, The Education of a Weaponized Man. To get your free copy today, head to ebook.awakentheprotector.ca. Number 2, you can take a free workshop where you will discover the 10 insights violent criminals don't want you to know. To take this workshop, head to workshop.awakentheprotector.ca. The third way is to head to my website and check out all of my free-line programs that cover everything from mindset to strategies. To check us out, go to awakentheprotector.ca. And finally, leave a 5-star review so that we can reach more good people like you who are ready to weaponize and rise regardless.